Terrako, the diminutive guardian who made his first appearance in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, not only became the new Baby Groot or Baby Yoda for gamers, but also became responsible for splitting up the already ambiguous Breath of the Wild timeline. His mysterious appearance into the new Breath of the Wild series has left us with many questions, but Terrako's character is surely welcomed by the Zelda fanbase.
Actually, not everyone loves him. He is responsible for this whole timeline mess after all.
That would be my overly enthusiastic and optimistic companion for this video, NebulAce.
Hi!
Together, we'll try to explain Terrako's mysterious connection to Zelda's power, and how he is able to time travel. I'm your host Andy, and welcome to Zeldom.
We actually know quite a bit about Terrako's life.
Unlike a certain other character, Astor.
Hey, don't mock our other video. As I was saying, Terrako was either built or repaired by Princess Zelda when she was no older than 6. Her mother, the queen at the time, was still alive, watching over Zelda as she activated her tiny guardian friend. Those two were inseparable, that is, until King Rome decided to take Terrako away from Zelda after the queen had passed. Without a mentor, awakening the sealing powers became a nearly hopeless duty to Zelda, and while she desperately wished for Terrako to stay by her side, the king claimed that it was nothing but a disgraceful distraction. Years passed by, and despite notable efforts and countless attempts, Zelda had still not awakened her powers by the age of 16. She had forgotten all about Terrako, who was still stashed away lifelessly within the castle. On Zelda's 17th birthday, Ganon suddenly awakened. Link and Zelda anticipated to head to Hyrule Castle, where they would fight together as legends foretold. However, one of them would fall. At Fort Etano, Link failed his duty to protect the princess due to grave injuries. To save Link, Zelda awakened her powers, unfortunately just one moment too late. At the same time, a similar beam of light appeared at the castle, where Terrako miraculously reactivated. For unexplained reasons, Terrako was able to open a portal that took him back in time along with bursts of malice. Now, it's not clarified why or how Terrako suddenly awakened, but Zelda's powers seem to have triggered his activation.
Probably the most prevalent theory out there to explain Terrako's connection to Zelda's power and his ability to time travel is that Zelda's powers are connected to the Triforce. So when Zelda's powers awaken, the Triforce would have activated Terrako, hence why he emits a golden light when activated, and travels back through time to bring Zelda's wish to fruition. I'm not going to say this is a bad or invalid theory, but for the sake of being an original theorist and that I generally do disagree with this, I'm going to give my take on why I don't think this is the case. First things first, I'm a believer that Zelda's sealing power is not the Triforce. While it is true that the mark of the Triforce does appear on the hand of its wielder, the mark of the Triforce can appear on someone's hand even if they don't possess one piece of it. We see this as the case in Skyward Sword. Every time Link imbues the Goddess Sword with one of the sacred flames, a piece of the Triforce appears on his hand, though we know for a fact that he does not have the Triforce yet, since he later goes to retrieve each piece of the Triforce within Skykeep. In describing his quest for the sacred flames, Impa tells Link, "You and your sword must grow together." Later, Zelda, aka Hylia, says that he has learned wisdom, gained power, and found courage, and that he is now worthy of wielding the Triforce, not that he has the Triforce, even with the mark already on his hand. She soon addresses this by saying that the mark is proof that he is the hero of legend and that sacred power dwells within him outside of the Triforce. With that info, I could start a whole other theory trying to explain Link's abilities, but for the sake of my point, I'll neglect that. Sure, having the mark on the hand doesn't mean that the person has that piece of the Triforce, but the reciprocal effect is also true. You can have pieces of the Triforce without the mark appearing on your hand. In Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link's backstory, the king gives the Triforce of power and wisdom to his heir, the prince, while he secretly entrusts Zelda with the Triforce of Courage's whereabouts out of concern for his son. It's stated in the Hyrule Historia that although he held 2 pieces of the Triforce, no marks appeared on his hand. Shortly prior to the events of the game, what's known as the Mark of the Hero, which is essentially the mark of the full Triforce, appeared on Link's hand despite not wielding any piece of the Triforce. I know I just went down a whole rabbit hole for this one argument, but with this I can confidently say that the mark of the Triforce on Zelda's hand in Breath of the Wild does not mean her sealing power is the Triforce. If you think about it, it also just wouldn't make sense. If it was the Triforce, Zelda would essentially be all-powerful. Ganon's power can't rival that of the Triforce, and since Zelda's power seems to be equivalent to Ganon's, this couldn't be the case. So now we need to figure out the nature of Zelda's sealing power so we can derive any possible connections between Terrako and this power. Instead, I believe that Zelda's sealing powers come from the Light Force that was first introduced in the Minish Cap. I have a separate video dedicated to that topic of the Light Force which you can find right here, but I'll give a quick overview for those who aren't familiar with this term. It's described by the Hyrule Historia to be a source of infinite power from the heavens that holds the enormous power of the Force, and is told by Vati to be a power that flows within the veins of the ladies of the royal family. In my video, I gave my arguments in an attempt to prove that this Light Force is Hylia's power from Skyward Sword. Demise's curse as he dies in Skyward Sword mentions that those who carry the blood of Hylia, or her descendants, aka every Zelda we see in the timeline, being subjected to an eternal conflict between them. In this game, Zelda literally is Hylia reborn and uses sealing magic to contain Demise for thousands of years until her chosen hero is ready. All of these things I've mentioned align with what we know about Zelda's power in Breath of the Wild. I still don't have an exact reason as to why the mark of the Triforce appears on her hand, but as I mentioned earlier, it still doesn't mean she has the full Triforce. Hylia was the assigned protector of the Triforce from the Golden Goddesses, meaning she has a strong connection to it, while the Triforce also appears in many places connected to Hylia, most significantly being the Temple of Hylia. I think by this point, it's safe to say that Zelda's power in Breath of the Wild is from her inherited life force, which would remain consistent with all the other games in the series. Now we can begin to answer our questions that we presented at the beginning of the video. Why is Terrako seemingly connected to Zelda's power, and how does he have the ability to time travel?
Since Terrako's powers are not essentially tied to the wish-granting Triforce, it becomes more reasonable to claim its connection to Hylia's powers, the power possessed by those born with the goddess's blood, or as Andy says, the Light Force. We know for a fact that Zelda's mother was a previous wielder of those sacred powers. Now, as Andy already mentioned, the beam of light that appears when Terrako awakens at the castle is undoubtedly identical to the golden blaze at Fort Atheno. If they are in fact one and the same, then Terrako might actually be in possession of the sealing powers.
Well, how is that possible?
Well, it all starts with the fact that there's no replica of Terrako. For all we know, he could be the only mini-guardian. Its creation took place before the prophet's warning reached the kingdom. Therefore, excavations hadn't even begun when Zelda and her mother built Terrako. Zelda mentions that she and her mother found guardian parts during their expeditions, so it's possible that they collected those pieces and built a guardian from scratch with the parts they had. Since the queen had the gift of premonition, she may have foreseen the dark events and chose to transfer her powers, or beyond that, her conscience, to Terrako with the purpose of guiding her daughter even after death. There's no textbook definition of the sealing powers that include an extensive description of its capacities, so who knows what can be done with it. But if you're willing to accept, or pretend to accept, even just for one moment, that the Queen's conscience is within Terrako, its behavior suddenly makes a lot of sense. It is overprotective of Zelda, not only when it comes to danger and harm, but with boys too. It knows how to soothe her, plays melodies that she connects with her mother, and most importantly, it distinguishes itself from any other guardian simply by having a personality. Terrako gets jealous, sad, happy, upset. It has feelings of empathy and understands emotions. When malice infuses it, Terrako tries to fight it. It's confused and in pain, trying not to give in to Ganon's will. It is the only guardian seen struggling and resisting. This should indicate that there is something within Terrako powerful enough to fight Ganon's possession, the influence of Zelda's mother, but without her full strength, she is unsuccessful in fending off the malice. I truly believe that there is a good reason for Terrako's particular behavior. Still, time travel is never mentioned as an attribute of the sealing powers, and while I could go back to saying that we don't actually know all the boundaries of the sealing powers, Andy has an idea that explains why Terrako has the ability to open the Gate of Time.
Of course I do. In the opening scene to Age of Calamity, when Terrako is activated and opens his time portal, we can see Sheikah text spiraling around this portal. Although the inner loops of this spiral are too blurred for us to read, we can translate the larger symbols, which seem to be a short phrase that repeats for the entire spiral. This phrase translates to, Open Gate of Time. This line is phrased like it's a pseudocode of a programmed protocol. It would be odd if Terrako's time-traveling abilities were solely technological, but I have to say it's far from impossible. Sheikah technology is so advanced in Breath of the Wild. It can teleport people and even divide beasts, as seen in Age of Calamity, creates bombs out of nowhere, briefly freezes objects in time with the Sheikah Slate, and so forth. Regardless of whether Terrako's time travel is enabled by technology or supernatural power, we still need more information either way. Since we don't really have much information to work with as to why Terrako can time travel, the only way I know to explain this is to see if there's a connection to any other methods of time travel we've seen throughout the Zelda series. The games where time travel plays a critical role in the story are Skyward Sword with Timeshift Stones and Gates of Time, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask where the Master Sword and Ocarina of Time are used in several instances, and the Oracle Seasons with that harp thingy. There's also a few other minor instances of time travel such as the Door of Time in Twilight Princess, Hyrule Castle being frozen in time in Wind Waker, and possibly a couple of others, but I don't see any potential connections to Terrako, so I'm going to overlook those. The Ocarina of Time has a similar function to the Harp of Ages, but page 53 of the Hyrule Historia suggests an idea that could help to start us draw more connections. With this talk of controlling time, one can't help but think of Ocarina of Time. The ocarina is the same color as the Timeshift Stones. Could they be made out of the same material? I know this only suggests a possibility, but Nintendo approved this book, so I think that this is basically a huge wink to saying that this is canon, but also not official canon if you know what I mean. Regardless, I think that we should start discussing the Timeshift Stones because this is where I think time travel begins to relate a lot more to robots, such as Terrako. Timeshift Stones are, well, stones that shift the time of a certain area around them. Someone at Nintendo must have put in overtime to come up with that name. In the game, the stones are said to be used to generate power or electricity for ancient robots built by an unknown civilization. There is an idea that this could possibly be the Sheikah, but analyzing that would create an entirely separate theory, so I'll have to make a video about that another time. The facility in which these Timeshift Stones are processed and refined is directly connected to the Temple of Time, which contains one of the two Gates of Time. These Gates of Time are said to have been created by Hylia and appear to also be technological structures, possibly being made of Timeshift Stones. Remember, Terrako's portal has the words Open Gate of Time spiraling around it. Since the goddess Hylia has been shown throughout the series to have a close connection with the concept of time, as in this case in Skyward Sword, it's very possible that Terrako could have been created with Timeshift Stones or at least Timeshift energy. This could explain how he's able to distort time, but Timeshift Stones alone can't change to multiple different time periods, which leads me to believe he has some higher technology or power inside of him to allow him to control his time-traveling powers. And I think the Queen's powers being embedded inside Terrako, as Ace mentioned, would help explain this.
As we were theorizing the idea and taking a closer look at Terrako and the science behind it, I started wondering why the Harbinger, the anti-Terrako, is never seen with the same capabilities. Wouldn't the Harbinger be able to travel through time as well? And what about its spiritual connection to Zelda? Wouldn't that still be there? The answer is yes, but no. The Harbinger is identical to Terrako with the slight difference that it is corrupted. The moment Terrako's body was infused with malice, it no longer possessed emotions and lost the ability to think for itself. Furthermore, and much more significant, to the Harbinger, the Queen's divine powers were untouchable. We see a similar concept in Twilight Princess where Ganon takes over Zelda but can't use her powers. This already cancels out several abilities that Terrako may have had, but since the source for its time-traveling powers have rather technological or material roots, it would still be able to open the Gate of Time. But why should it? Everything is going according to plan. Astor appears to be having the upper hand, and since the Harbinger is simply following Ganon's orders, it goes neither back nor forth in time. The moment its time-traveling capabilities could come in handy, it's already too late for the Harbinger.
Man, I wish I had a Timeshift Stone because that right there is a lot of information to take in.
Well, I wasn't the one who wanted to explain the entirety of Skyward Sword's history.
Hey, we cut that out.
You're welcome, by the way. Let's just quickly review our points, and by quickly, I mean quickly.
The Queen embedded her powers into Terrako since she could have been aware of the fate of Hyrule and wanted a way to help her daughter Zelda.
Terrako's connection to the sealing powers is the reason for his activation when Zelda awakens her powers.
The Sheikah technology, or at least Terrako, could have utilized Timeshift Stone technology, so in unison with the Queen's power, he was capable of opening a Gate of Time similar to the two from Skyward Sword. There's plenty of room for other ideas to incorporate into these theories, especially with the ancient robots and timeshift stones from Skyward Sword, so maybe I'll make a video on that in the future. Thanks again to NebulAce for joining me in this video. Ace, you still there?
Sorry, what? I think I dozed off when you started talking about Skyward Sword again. We done here?
Everyone pardon her please, she has no appreciation for culture.
And on that note, I think I'm going to leave you now.
Yeah, get out of here. Anyways, be sure to go check out our theory about Astor over on her channel, which will be linked in the description as well as right here. Thank you so much for watching, and stay nerdy, y'all.